All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining another Mass Medic webinar. My name is Nicole Owens. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications for the organization. If you're not familiar with us, we work to bolster the medical device industry through advocacy, education, networking, and awareness, primarily in the New England area. Today, we are bringing you a great webinar on partnering in medtech, perspectives from Quebec and Massachusetts. It's going to be a great conversation. We are recording this webinar, so everyone who registered will get a copy of the recording after the webinar, and we are going to have time for Q&A. So as questions occur to you, please feel free to put them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. All right, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our partner for this event. Noah from the Quebec Government Office in Boston is going to start us off. Noah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our webinar today. I'm Noah Lett, and I'm the Life Sciences and Technology Attaché at the Quebec Government Office in Boston. And we're excited to be sponsoring this webinar with Mass Medic and also to have recently become a member of Mass Medic ourselves. So for those of you who don't know, the Quebec government has had an office in Boston since 1970. We're a team of 10 whose role is to act as connectors between Quebec and New England, whether that be on the business side, political side, or via cultural initiatives. And recently, one of our big focus areas has been the medtech industry, which is really flourishing in Quebec with both well-established companies as well as new innovative companies. And in recent years, there's been a strong public and private initiatives to really foster further research and commercialization in the sector. And our network of offices is frequently at the annual MedTech conference, so don't hesitate to connect with us during the conference later this year in Toronto. And of course, as you all know, Massachusetts has one of the world's strongest medtech clusters. So we only thought it natural to find ways to connect our two ecosystems. And one of the ways is to highlight some of our great companies and the partnerships they've established with companies in Massachusetts, but also more broadly in the US. So we're thrilled to have panelists from 3 great companies today to tell you that story. And to help us tell that story, we're honored to have as our moderator, Geneviève Lavatue, who is the Director of Government Affairs and Policy at Johnson & Johnson Medtech Canada, and who's an experienced senior executive in the medtech industry with years of experience helping life science companies with their commercialization strategies. So we're thrilled to also have her perspective today. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to her and have her introduce the panelist. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Yes, so Johnson & Johnson MedTech. And I'm really stoked about the theme today, which is about why partnerships are so critical to success. And if I reflect back on some of the observations I've had, is that innovation thrives in ecosystems because it promotes the creativity and it fosters the multidisciplinary spark that makes the whole work better. And so as we have our panelists here, I think of them as my partnership ninjas. I told them before in the prep, and I'm really happy that they're going to share their experience. So without further ado, could you please introduce yourself, your company, and why partnerships have been so critical to success? We'll start with Ryan, move on to Alex, and then Francois.
All right, thank you, Geneviève. My name is Ryan Reinhardt with OpSense Medical, Director of Business Development here, focused primarily on the OEM business. OpSense, as the name suggests, is an optical sensing company based in Quebec City, Quebec, founded in the early 2000s on proprietary fiber optic sensing technology. And so that means with light, we can measure things like pressure and temperature, other physical parameters as well, but those two are the most common. The fibers we're working with are a little thicker than a human hair, so imagine very, very small, very, very easy to integrate into devices. And so started out with the sensors, selling them into any industry, really, working with all sorts of customers in medical, nuclear, aerospace, defense. In about 2010, company pivoted, said we want to create our own devices. And so we became OpSense Medical. came with the world's first pressure guide wire fiber optic pressure sensor in coronary intervention. Some folks on this call may be familiar with FFR. That was the made famous by the FAME study. That's kind of the wave we rode behind the others like Volcano, who were first to market. We came with the what we think is the best pressure guide wire for coronary intervention, specifically in coronary physiology. And we've just recently come with the Savvy wire, which is the world's first pressure guide wire in structural heart. We opened our first US office right before the Savvy wire launch in 2022. So we set up camp here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And partnerships, I think, just in short, were the foundation of this company. So we came with this technology that was invented, came out of university. A couple of our founders wanted to start a company. They got the money together. Okay, what are we going to do? We could just say, hey, let's sell these sensors, let's promote them, market them, put them up on DigiKey or some electronics website, and just hope that people buy them for test setups and stuff. But what happened was different. So we found that our founders found companies that needed either improvements in their sensing technology or wanted to add sensing technology to their devices, and partnered with them to integrate it correctly. You can be given a really great tool, but if you don't know how to use it, if you don't know how it works, how to implement it correctly, it won't function as it's supposed to. It won't reach its full potential. And so for the first 10 years of the company, that was really the lifeblood, was partnering with companies, not just in the Quebec area, that's where we started, but globally, to integrate our pressure sensors and temperature sensors into their devices.
Thank you, Ryan. Alex, why don't you give us a little bit of background on Cambridge Consultants?
Sure. So I'm Alex, and I'm the Vice President of Robotics and Digital Surgery at Cambridge Consultants. Cambridge Consultants is a world-leading product development and technology consulting firm. So we work with lots of medtech clients, some of the biggest multinationals in the world, and then also ambitious startups to help identify opportunities for breakthrough technologies to change the business, and then also to develop those technologies and products. So what's kind of special about us is we focus in kind of finding dynamic markets where we expect technology to have a significant impact in enabling growth and transformation. And then we make significant investment in kind of building teams of experts, from like market experts to deep technology experts, and then also facilities and equipment to be great in those specific areas. So one of those is digital surgery and surgical robotics, which is what I'm largely focused on. And so thinking about that in the context of partnership, the obvious thing that comes to mind is, of course, we partner with tech companies all around the world to do work, and that's interesting inherently. But there's also opportunity where we partner with companies like Canova, which we'll learn a little more about in a minute here, for other providers in that space. And one of the kind of trends that I've observed that I think is important for this kind of increasing need for partnership in the future is really driven by the fact that solutions, I think, are becoming more and more specialized and more niche in a way. We're getting more and more customized product solutions for more specific needs, which I don't have time to get into now, but which is kind of a trend you see in multiple industries. And as that happens, and as the complexity of these solutions increases, the breadth of knowledge that you need and the number of specialty experts that you need, and the cross-disciplinary nature of that to implement it, and the number of technologies that have to integrate to do it, it becomes not only impractical, but maybe unwise to try to do all of that yourself, just from a scale perspective and certainly from a time perspective. And so I think businesses are going to more and more have to be thinking about not just how are we going to do this from an R&D or development perspective, how are we going to achieve this scale, but also who do we want to be, and what's our business model, and what's our core competency? Where do we need to be excellent, and where can we leverage things that exist? And so that's a big part of kind of where not only do we augment and work with our clients in that way and try to be focused on delivering the right things that they need, but also same thing as we help clients do this work, or as we do it ourselves, we have to think about where can we partner so that we can achieve speed, and where do we really want to focus on being excellent and capturing value for ourselves versus incorporating other things to win in a competitive environment.
Thank you, Alex. And now, Francois, why don't you introduce us to Kinova Robotics?
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, everyone. Francois Boucher. I'm VP of Strategic Growth at Kinova. Kinova is located nearby in Montreal. We've been founded in 2006, and we are one of the very, very few designer and manufacturer of robot arm for medical application in the world. So our mission basically is to support our clients, our partners, medical device manufacturers that are engaged into the development of a surgical robotics system, either for the very first time or a second generation, and help them with one of the core components of that system, which is often the robot arm itself. So we're providing them with expertise, technologies, support on regulation, and most of all, manufacturing capabilities of such a complex devices in the medical industry with quality and reliability. One good example that I can name that is public about those kind of partnerships is on the platform of Geneviève company, Johnson & Johnson, the Monarch, where we've engaged with J&J in the development of their system that was successfully launched a couple of years ago. And why those partnerships are so important for us. First, for Kinova, for ourselves, a robot is an extremely complex engineering device. It integrates a lot of different engineering function, mechanical, electrical, software, firmware, web, sensors, motors, tons of stuff that are very hard to integrate and have a deep knowledge on each of it. So we ourselves, as a developer, have our network of partners to be able to give the best product to our customer. But for our clients, the medical device companies, it's even a step higher, because yes, they do have to integrate our robot arm in their system, but they have a cart, instrumentation, software, pre-planning, managing the clinical workflow, everything related to safety of the system, the manufacturing, the integration, the usability studies. As you can imagine, it's a lot of work, a lot of challenge, required a lot of expertise. And to be honest, in 2024, imagine yourself that you can be competitive in today's market in terms of time to market, quality of product, innovation, with our partnering and doing it all by yourself. It's a bit utopic at this point. So that's for us in the industry of surgical robotics, where myself and Cambridge got so evolving. It became almost a necessity to be able to be competitive. So that was my part.
Thank you, Francois. So I think that this also gives us a nice window into talking about, okay, all very nice to say everybody needs partnerships because nobody can be the best in the world at absolutely everything, and ecosystems are even more creative. So that brings me to one of those topics that I find really fascinating, which is trying to identify what are those creation moments and what are those pivots that occur in the development of a partnership. So it made me think of a story that sort of relates to what we're talking about today. So the ventricular assist heart pump was originally born out of a NASA engineer working at the Johnson Space Center, who consulted with his cardiologist, who was Dr. DeBakey. And Dr. DeBakey had been working on the concept of pumps for a long time, but he couldn't get the flow right. He couldn't get laminar flow with his roller pump. And so what it took was a fluid dynamics engineer who needed to solve the laminar flow question for spaceflight to come together with Dr. DeBakey and solve the heart pump problem. So it all looks different for all kinds of different partnerships. So in the case of OpSens, it started out with a small collaboration in 2010. So what did it look like? And like, if you didn't know what the future was going to be, how do you recognize that opportunity moment that then grew into an exclusive license with Abiomed in 2014, and then a supply agreement in 2019, and then a renewal to 2028. So what does it look like? And then how do you need to mature to grow the partnership through the ups, the downs, the good and the bad?
What a beautiful segue. Yeah, this is the example I wanted to pull on because I think it's so relevant, right? So Abiomed, a Massachusetts-based medical device company, and us, it was our first big customer in the medical space, or one of our first big customers in that space, and really a strategic one. They had a big need, right? They thought, okay, we need to sense pressure in the heart. We want to invent the world's smallest heart pump. We're going to be in the body. That's tough. We're going to be around tons of turbulence because you're in the chambers of the heart. That's a tough problem because these sensors are sensitive to those environments where there's lots of fluid moving. And so we found each other. They were looking for a better sensor. We had a light-based sensor. So these electrical-based sensors, they're bigger. They require wires going back and forth. We can be, oh, go ahead.
Just to go back on that, was it a trade show? Was it a cold call? Was it, pounding the pavement? Was it a mutual?
That's a good question. I was not around back when we engaged with them in 2004, 2005. So I'm not 100% sure on the details of how they found each other. I wish I could answer that question, but all roads lead to Rome. So we found each other, we engaged. I think they were out looking for sensing technology, and they heard about optical sensing, right? They were looking outside of just traditional piezoelectric sensing, and I'm sure one thing led to another. It's a small world. Okay, is this going to work? And right, like I said at the beginning, it's not just here's our sensors. It's okay, our sensors are very unique. Let's figure out with you together how we can integrate this correctly, because it's a tough thing, right? World's smallest heart pump, you need to be small. Tough environment, you need to be essentially driftless because it's going to be in the body for a long period of time. So as it heats up, as hygroscopic action or as moisture can get into the sensor, things can expand. Our sensor is essentially driftless or immune to those things. And you need to be accurate because this thing is driving the physician to place the pump correctly. You need to be very safe in that environment, of course. So we started working with them in 2005, and what ensued was essentially a decade-long co-development project to integrate this, to go help them through clinicals, iterate, and get them to the point where they had a device they came to market with in this very hard to come to market space. I think everybody on this call who has been in kind of that ventricular assist or heart failure space knows it's a tough, it's a very sensitive space, very highly controlled by the regulatory bodies. So that was a big project for us early on. This was before we became a device company. And so it was great to partner with them, to grow with them, to be their sensor expert. And then in parallel, we learned from them and from other customers in the medical space, like how do you commercialize? How do you integrate a sensor in a medical device? And we saw some opportunities in not competitive spaces to the Impella, but as I said before, we found an application that fit, and we wanted to come with our own device. And so in FFR and coronary intervention, we came with the OptiWire, and the OptiWire, was built with a lot of the same folks that were involved in this partnership with Abiomed. And so not only did we help them by being the sensor experts, helping them integrate, navigate how to set up this algorithm, how to see the right pressures, how to make sure it's accurate, how to test it, how to build it. But then we learned in how to commercialize our own medical device. And so that partnership was really symbiotic. And if we would have just said, here's our sensors, go for it, we wouldn't have learned, and they may not have been successful.
And I assume that you had to put some intentionality into how you were going to manage that relationship between Abiomed and OpSens. So create either the resources or the focus or the habits and the ways of working together over time and at different sizes as each of you was scaling up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Impella went through the acquisition, I believe, early on during the time of the project. So there was that jump to make. We were a small company, before. Um, right now, the organization is still running as is, even though we were just recently acquired by Humanetics. But the OpSense organization, currently like 350 people. Back then, even smaller than that. So, navigating not only the international kind of boundaries of this, but then also the size differences mattered. And I think a lot of that comes down to not just working together in an impromptu manner. It's setting up a co-development agreement with terms, being really clear around IP, being really clear around non-compete, and being really clear about this is going to cost this much money, and we're gonna split it here. This needs to be funded here. Like setting that all up at the beginning and making sure it is truly a symbiotic relationship, that it's a win-win all the way through. That's what has led to now nearly a 20-year partnership with them since we did engage in the mid-aughts with them.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that story. Alex, I think that you've also had some seminal moments that led you to grow a wonderful partnership. Can you walk us through what that looked like and what that has become and what it took to go from A to B?
Sure. And I think I might let Francois comment a bit on some of the initial moments in kind of us meeting in the relationship with Kinova, but I'll comment a bit on kind of what that looks like for me and maybe some other general comments. I think at a high level, one of the things that's the most important, but it seems the most obvious, but I still think underappreciated in some ways, is the importance of understanding each other's business. So you're like engaging in a partnership, learning to understand what the needs are and also the values and desires of the state of the company, which I think that's a big part of kind of even how in the case of Cambridge Consultants and Kinova, looking into engaging and partnering, there was an immediate acknowledgement of we have some similar interests and complementary skills, and there should be some way to work together. So actually taking the time to listen and understand is always so important. And I think that resonates across all good partnerships that I've been a part of in the past. And I think that, thinking about maybe specifically in that case, an important part is understanding your own strategy, what you want to get out of something and what you need and what you want to be good at. Like I was saying before, in the case of this relationship with Kinova, I knew that with what we have in digital surgery at Cambridge Consultants, there are some things we wanted to develop and show and talk to our clients about and help them with. And a lot of that is excellence in surgical end effector development or novel sensing systems or connected ecosystems and what you can do when you have multiple data sources and applications of AI and control and lots of technologies. There's plenty of things, and there has to be some things that you don't do. And so where there were enabling technologies that existed that we could use, that would be very attractive to me. So imagine if I had to construct from scratch just to showcase some new surgical end effector to help perform a job, or a bit of autonomous control. If I had to start from also building an entire medical robot arm from the ground up with every bit of custom hardware, right, to achieve the level of performance in something that someone else has already optimized. I mean, but being able to drop that in, start from there and go quickly, not just what we needed for what I wanted to show, but it's also often what our clients need. And so making sure that in all these partnerships, we have an understanding both of what our clients are going to need, what we want to do, and what we're okay to not do, and not trying to do everything yourself. And then again, listening to others to say, okay, well, you guys are entering the space and you want to tell a story as well. You want people to know about your capabilities, and then understanding how that would actually fit really well into the piece of it that I don't need to tell, because the reality is, if our clients, if it's the right solution for them, then that's what we would want to introduce them to anyway. So maybe I'll leave it there. We can come back depending what Francois covers.
I love having both sides of the relationship on the same call. Francois, yes. So tell us about your partnership journey with Cambridge Consultants, and if you have any insights there that you would want to share with our audience as to what's important to notice and what's important to invest in or pay attention to, whether good, bad, or very specific that you wouldn't know unless you've walked 1,000 paces in those shoes.
You know, almost mirrored what Alex just told, but from our perspective. So as I was mentioning earlier today, med device are coming to us to build the robotic part of their system, right? And we're often the first point of contact when the medical device company is looking for partners to develop their system. I'm not saying the arm is the most important in the solution, far from it. But visually, when you're looking at surgical robots, it's like the first thing that you're looking at. So we're often the first contact they're making in their journey to find partners, right? And it became very rapidly crucial for us to see that all those med device companies are craving for having access to that ecosystem. So very rapidly, when we enter that market of surgical robotics, we start to look who were the best and who can complement, as was Alex saying, our solution, because at the end we're just an arm, right? So, and that's where with the evolution of the surgical suite and the digitalization of everything around the surgical robotic system, for us it became crucial to have that partner in that area. And that's where after looking around, we found that Cambridge was the best one. As Alex said, it's a mutual understanding. You know, we're all businesses at the end. We're always saying partners, but it's really important since we have all the common goal of succeeding as business to establish those clear guidelines at the very beginning, and those complementary are well boxed, let's say, so that both parties can win out of this relationship. So that communication, a partnership is almost like traditional business challenge you might have in your own business, right? Communication, establish goals, execution, right? But it's even more complicated because you're not within the business. I mean, you're dealing with someone else. So that would be my top one recommendation, is to everything you do to have your own business run smoothly. Don't underestimate the work that is needed, right? To have that same kind of relationship with your partners, and otherwise the same failure will happen with your partners in your own business. So adaptability, flexibility is really important also. No one has the same knowledge or background, so you really have to also adapt. Let's say Alex and I go together to a client. It might be a very large corporation with very little knowledgeability in surgical robotics, or it can be a startup very knowledgeable. So we also have to adapt a lot to our customers. So I would say those are our big takeaways of this relationship we have at Cambridge.
So whereas there would be a unified, more unified span of control, let's say, within your company to do a project, in this case, the leadership is more diffuse. The objectives, you need to really double down on communication and invest the resources to create that leading outside the corporate walls and within a formal structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Ryan, I think that you wanted. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like you said, that planning is everything, especially in partnership. We shouldn't underestimate that phase.
Ryan, I think that you wanted to interject. I saw your hand go up.
Yeah. I wanted to just, if something popped in my head while Francois was getting his answer. I think it's a really good point, right? You need to, sometimes the answer is do it yourself, but sometimes, a lot of times partnership is better, because there are people out there, there are ecosystems out there where there's a special knowledge, a special, subject matter area that they're really good at. And these are things that are often unknown, right? So you could be a med device company in, a hub, right? Where they're very proud of tech comes out of here, think the Bay Area, think Boston, think even outside North America, Israel, Toronto, like these other places. it's really easy to just partner with the people that are around you, right? We don't need to go outside. We can do it ourselves. We're going to find this. We're going to find stuff. But if you don't look outside, you can't find these little ecosystems. So in Quebec City, for example, OpSense is part of a small hub there of optical sensing expertise, right? There's a couple of companies just a walk away from our facility that INO is one of them. They're just down the street. It's a different type of optical service and technology, but there's a small hub and the local universities, the local companies in Quebec City, which is a small metro area, that there's just this deep knowledge and this technology that doesn't exist elsewhere in the world, right? Our white light fiber optic pressure sensing technology is only available if you know of us in Quebec City. And a lot of the folks at our company have come from, I knew it. I knew that the UPS was going to come. He was going to knock on the door, not put the package down lightly. So my dog's getting excited about partnerships too. My point in this is look outside your ecosystem and really evaluate who's the right partners and don't just have the blinders on, right? Because we found that Abiomed found us, or Ampella found us in Quebec City. I, as a medical device engineer previous to this job, didn't know about this sensing technology. I would have just gone with traditional piezoelectric sensors if I was developing something where I needed to sense pressure and temperature. But looking outside, you can find these hubs where there's knowledge that doesn't exist elsewhere in the world. And a good example of that, my last point, is our first customer of the company was actually a company from Japan who had an IABP system where they needed pressure sensing because in intra-aortic balloon pumping, similar to ventricular assist devices like the Impella, you need sensing pressure is really important. And that's something where a company in Japan, small, and a company in Quebec found each other, and it was a perfect fit. It wasn't just staying within our ecosystems. That made a lot of sense. They gave us some of the funding that kept the company going early on. And then they ended up being a distributor of our device when we came to market with the OptoWire in Japan. So again, symbiotic relationship. When you work closely with these partners where the fit is really good, a lot can come from it that you don't expect.
That's really interesting because it points out as well that where you find that unique expertise may not be labeled according to the end use. For instance, the optical technology cluster that you're talking about around Quebec City, it's not just used for medical. It was developed for all kinds of different applications, and it exists as a thriving ecosystem in all kinds of high value applications with different forms of fiber optics. But you wouldn't necessarily see a sign on top of that building or cluster that says we make medical devices here, right? So that's the multidisciplinarity we were talking about before.
Yeah, and that's where I think, we wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't look internationally, if we didn't look to a lot of places to find the right partners that needed our tech, where we knew the partnership could be good for both companies. Yeah, I would just say, don't jump to partner with just the people, just the companies within your ecosystem. Kind of make sure you pick the right ones, take your time, and get everything you can from those partnerships.
So, Alex, I'm going to call on you as well to talk about what are the things that in your world made the strength of your ecosystem that got Cambridge to where it's at, and where it made sense to also make a bridge, and what you found in the Quebec ecosystem that was going to be fruitful for you to put your efforts into.
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty broad. Like I said, certainly at our company, I think something that we do really well, and I guess I alluded to this at the beginning, is we may have the courage to say or feel like we can do anything, but I think we have a good acknowledgement that we can't do everything, or shouldn't, because you just can't be great at everything. but you have the choice to do anything. So it's important to make those thoughtful choices. But in doing so, you need to be able to define the things that you don't do. So some of what we were just talking about, some of the things we focus on being excellent at, like we do work within other industries, and we have the opportunity to cross-pollinate those ideas and even utilize aspects of the intellectual property that we create and the technologies that we create in other industries. And that makes kind of Cambridge consultants an excellent breeding ground for innovation, so like transform industries. And so that's a lot of what we tend to be excellent at. And we like to start with an understanding of the strategic aspects of where our clients are going or need to go, and help them with that and help them translate that and find opportunities to apply technology to get them, a leap ahead of the competition. A part of the things that we've kind of acknowledged that we don't do is we didn't go out and expand into high volume manufacturing and try to build a manufacturing business on top of that. And we are best utilized where there's cloudy, high uncertainty, high technical risk, right? And if it's write down a spec for exactly what you want, and we can use everything we already have, we just need somebody to execute it, right? It's not the same. And if there's something that already exists that does the job, we appreciate that, we should do that. And so I think some of that focus on where we should fit and apply the most value, and being able to work with our client customers and partners in a way that's very collaborative at helping them succeed and making sure our interests are aligned. It's also been an area where we can partner with things like what contract manufacturers should we partner with, or other professional test houses, or in some of these cases like providers of off-the-shelf high quality metrology systems rather than building yourself, or robotic manipulators that can be made, and experts at doing pieces of this that they can really deeply specialize in. So we do believe in using the right tool for the right job. I think that's been a big part of the journey in getting here. In terms of Quebec, I think it's funny because some of this is started almost kind of accidental in a way for me, which is it became surprising how often I ended up talking to people in Canada when I would be looking for experts or calling about technologies that exist, especially robotic technologies and medical device technologies. To be honest, had come up. And I think over time, the main things that started to become more apparent that may be systemic to that were largely the access to high quality talent, largely from some excellent universities in the area. And then also, and this is not something I'm deeply expert in, so hopefully I don't get a million questions about it, but the thing that I've seen is an incredible access to support from the government and even investment in key technology areas that has resulted in like a flourishing innovation ecosystem. And so, like I said, more often than you'd expect, based on like a probabilistic approach to the population, I ended up talking to people. So the per capita innovation and technology opportunity was significant, and an aligned interest in either similar customers or similar types of innovations. And so over time, some of those partnerships became more and more formal as we realized that we could have more synergistic offerings where we'd both benefit from a more consolidated value proposition, or maybe even just working together or leveraging pieces of tech that people have built. So I'll pause maybe on that, because I think I'm taking up a lot of time.
Yeah, phenomenal. Because it's a good segue as well. Speaking of talent and the strengths in ecosystems, I remember hearing from Dr. Frederick Mull, who was in Boston, I believe, at the time, in the early days of building up RS Health. He was looking high and wide throughout the world for some of the specific technology problems that he wanted to solve. And he heard about the Kinova robotics early technology that was being used at University of Montreal at the time. And so that speaks to some of the highly technical talent. So I think that's one of the things that got Dr. Mull to come and visit at University of Montreal to see the technology for himself, and to meet Charles Deguire, the CEO of Kinova Robotics in the early days when there were hardly any people around the table. So François, over a question for you. What are some of the things that you think are the strengths that you build on in Quebec as the good breeding ground for the talent, technology, and partnerships that you need to grow?
Yeah, I think I won't repeat what Alex said and you said, Genevieve. We have great universities here with great talent. One good thing when I'm comparing similar projects with folks in the US and similar project done in Canada, it's always ending up Canada's cheaper to do it, and I don't think it's for lesser quality or innovation, right? I think it's just the structure we're built on. We're not good at everything in Canada, of course, not in R&D, but on that specific sector of being able to develop, um, being cost affordable for certain innovation project. I think we have great things here. I'll let Ryan speak about maybe the tax incentive, but on top of that, we have very great subsidies, interest-free loans from government that don't require a very large project or a lot of time to get. So Kinova ourselves, I can count the number of projects like these that we were able to get over the years. With tax credits, I was looking at a stat, just generally speaking, outside of all those special programs, for high tech in Canada compared to US, report shows that it's roughly between 20 and 30% cheaper doing it. And that's accumulation of, as I said, tax credits, the salaries that are lower here than most in the metropolitan areas in the US. Things like that's really fueled the tech sector.
Different forms of non-dilutive funding.
Yeah.
Excellent. I cannot see if there are any questions, but so that people have a chance to think about their questions, are there any things that you would like to add, Ryan, Alex, or Francois, that I have not asked, but you wanted to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I have a point just to build on Francois about the ecosystem within Quebec and in Canada, and the support that we've got. So OpSense has, we've been around for a long time, relative to other early stage commercial med device companies. We were founded in 2001, I believe, early aughts, so over 20 years. And yeah, from what I've been told and then what I've seen since my time here, we've been supported amazingly by the government through grants, through tax credits, through the relatively low cost of living situation in Quebec City. And we haven't been lacking talent, right? We had all the optical technology expertise we needed kind of within the Quebec ecosystem, and then recruiting from the greater Quebec area, so from Toronto, from Montreal, kind of the larger cities off to the west. We were able to build a really strong R&D team. And initially, before the med device pivot, a lot of that was sensor, a lot of that was optical engineering, but then we had to hire on folks that could do all the other things you need to commercialize a medical device. So mechanical engineers, quality engineers, regulatory, clinical. And we found all of that, pretty much all of that in Quebec. When I joined the company, there was less than 10 of us outside of Quebec City. And that was only for a little over 3 years ago now. So it's just Quebec seems to be a great breeding ground for this, and it allows, I think, if you teleport OpSense, say we were founded in the Bay or something, or in Seattle, like high cost of living area, it may not have worked out because you have to burn fast, grow fast in the US, and especially in some of those high cost of living areas. And the government doesn't help as much. I mean, you can find some local government help and within the states. But I know just from a networking perspective, from a grant perspective, and then from a subsidy perspective, the government and Investment Quebec and the delegations of Quebec throughout the world have been hugely advantageous for us, and I think allowed us to take our time commercializing the OptiWire. When we pivoted to be a medical device company, we said kind of naively, like, we're going to do whatever. We're just going to come to market with a medical device. That should be easy enough. Like, we're going to pick this space, not oil and gas, not whatever, because that was our big market early on, was oil and gas. We said we're going to go with a medical device, and we just went, right? And it took us longer than we thought. I think that's probably the story for most medical device startups, but it took us much longer. And I think we had extra runway because we had, again, lower cost of living, tons of support from the government. We were able to take our time, do it right, come to market with a great device. And it's led to, success with the OptiWire, a first of its kind wire in structural heart in a really rapidly growing space and valvular interventions. And then now, just recently, the acquisition by Humanetics to join their hospital portfolio as they build that out, right, alongside Cardiva and then future ones as we, as Humanetics becomes a leader in the cath lab in the cardiology device space. So it's a success story, but a lot of that has to do with the fact of where we were from and the support we got from the Quebec government.
So we have our first question from the audience right now, and you've piqued their curiosity on are there specific entities, agencies, or bodies that you've found particularly helpful in your path to development? Or are there types of programs that have been really key, whether it's a specific subsidy program or a tax credit program or a talent subsidy program that you think have been really important for you?
If that's for us,
It's a question for any of the panelists.
I'll just say for us, I'll reiterate, and I haven't been the one submitting the grants over the years. Like I said, I've been with the company for 3.5 years, so I am not the expert on this. However, if people are interested and reach out to me, I can probably hook you up with the person internally who did do a lot of this work. But from my experience, what I've seen, Investment Quebec, that the team there has worked with me closely on promotion and marketing and such, and then they've been an avenue for us to connect with the right government entities to go after these opportunities and to understand what opportunities there are out there. So I'd say just, you reach out to Investment Quebec and the Quebec government, and you'll quickly find there's a lot of great people there. They're going to point you in the right direction. And whether it's R&D tax credits, whether it's grants to expand your production environment, whether it's making introductions to other regions and other governmental entities or regulatory entities that you need to or you should to successfully commercialize your device, that's where I would start.
Yeah, and there's the equivalent also at the federal level with the same kind of project ranging from a few $100K up to multi-million-dollar project. And what's great is not just pure R&D project. They also have some programs where they incentivize also the commercialization. So they will not finance necessarily the commercialization of a project, but it's not just for pure low TRL R&D that the program exists. It's actually for later stage TRLs where the goal for government at the end is that there's a successful commercialization. So that's a good range, I would say, of financial support we can get, that it's not just pure low TRL R&D.
So paying attention to the valley of death, beyond I have a bright idea to I can actually make it on my own.
Yeah, exactly.
So we also have a couple new questions now. We also have a question of, does that sometimes have an inverse effect where is this system of tax grants and incentives, is that ever a disincentive from partnering with service or other types of companies outside of Canada or outside of Quebec?
Again,
the question is to any of you.
As Ryan, I'm more managing a partnership than the tax credit behind it. So I'm not the specialist, but what I can say is it's true. I won't lie that it's more favorable for us to deal with local service companies in certain type of grants, right? Generally speaking. But I know of, and we at Kinova are involved already in international grants where Quebec government, the other country, we have one with Germany right now, we have one with Japan, we have one with the States, where that specific grants per country where actually those kind of relationships are encouraged. So I would say with the traditional tax credits, you're right, but there's specific programs that encourage those collaboration outside of Quebec or Canada.
Yeah, that's true. And some outreach as well for international markets like in Germany coming up soon, right? With the Hanover Messe and things like that. Excellent.
Yeah, and for us, as far as I would just add to Francois that it for specific projects, there are constraints for things that you're going to use the tax credit for, right? Because you want this government money to kind of help grow naturally, this organic, the things that they're funding, they want that money in to stay within and grow within within Quebec, right? But no one has a shortage of projects they're working on, right? You have R&D, you have production, you've got so even though you may for an individual product or project that you get a grant for be incentivized to do that organically and internally, and you need to use the dollars there. Okay, well that frees up dollars in another place in your company or other people on your team to go work with folks in other ecosystems where they have experience, like to go work with a Cambridge consultants on a specific project where they've done it 100 times before and we've not done it before. So we're going to go do that project there, and we're going to vote for this project. We're going to go get money for the government and grow and have our team locally here be working on that.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have a question that uncharacteristically I will be directing at Alex because I think that he can maybe provide some feedback from experience. You were talking about before the fact that as you attack problems that at their most nebulous, you go out and source the best tech that you need in order to solve those big, hairy problems. So I'm sure that you go to different places, both in the US, Canada, maybe Quebec specifically, and sometimes end up in universities where that tech is. So we have a question about licensing IP and having negotiations or discussions with universities. Do you have any observations or words of wisdom to share with our viewers about what's it like to negotiate with, let's say, Boston University or Harvard about some of the IP versus negotiating with some universities in Canada, Quebec, wherever you need?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. So
I bet.
I don't know that I wish I had a more complete answer, but I will say what I can. So the first thing is for Cambridge, a part of our core business is creation of IP. So we often aren't buying personally us buying and acquiring people's IP, right? Our clients often we can help as external, as content experts, right, to find and value IP, right, and vet it and all that. So we do stay pretty close to the research community at universities. So, but again, in this specific role, maybe not as much negotiation on that. Partnership with universities for research is something where there's also quite a bit of where there is some experience as well. So I'm just that's almost like the preface. So now I'll try my best to sort of answer this question, but partly it's maybe from past experience, which is that I can mostly comment on the U.S. and my experience in negotiating related to IP with the U.S., specifically when it comes to research projects and who would own IP if you did joint research, that being quite difficult, frankly. I find the U.S. universities want to own the IP, and it's very difficult to arrange something with confidentiality and ownership for your business. And often international partnerships, you can find very different and more creative business models that work. I think the actual acquisition of IP from like a technology transfer process, if a university has IP that you would like, my experience with that is it's actually pretty individual based on the universities, maybe more than the specific country, if that makes sense. But the general practices of like how you approach IP ownership and expectations for that, those maybe tend to be a little bit more regional. So maybe I'd kick that over to Francois and Ryan to see if you guys have any experience maybe specifically on the sentiment of this in Quebec.
No, I agree with you, Alex. It's really university specific. Some have a really open approach with the professors and students on how they can reuse the IP afterward, and some others are really stringent. So I don't think there's necessarily originality out there, and each deal needs to be taken case by case.
Yeah, I would say, not to be boring here, but yeah, it really is that's the answer. It's specific to the university, specific to even the program within the university sometimes. We've done some of this. We've done it, and we've entertained many opportunities to sort of buy IP within certain spaces. And it really does vary just by, so you have to contact the right folks within that space within the university in licensing. There's usually a couple of people that are dedicated to that. And I would say just be creative. They do have pretty stringent guidelines for term and how things are compensated, but I would say don't be afraid to talk and see if they're willing to do something unique. I mean, it could be royalties, it can be annual payments, it can be usually they just want to make sure that the folks that invented the technology are well taken care of, and the university that funded and was a platform for the invention. So again, I think it's not different between the U.S. and Canada so much, but university to university and program to program.
So we're going to do a quick fire round now because I would like to give you all some final parting words, maybe of wisdom. One sentence, what would you advise people on how to do partnerships right? And I want to make sure that we leave some time at the end to thank our hosts. So go ahead, Ryan, Francois, and Alex, in that order, please.
One sentence. I would say in one sentence, take your time, look outward, and be symbiotic, right? It's, find the right folks, make sure it's the right folks, and then, work early on to really understand both companies' needs and how we can make it a win-win.
Thank you.
I would say today's partnership are a necessity, but don't underestimate the effort it requires to make it work. So you should consider partnership as important and as involving any other business transaction you might do in your line of work.
Alex?
Yes, for me, I want to just quickly say one thing that I feel like we almost missed, but is super important just to make sure that it's covered, which is we've talked a lot about like the searching for innovation and the rate and like some of the very tangible benefits and things that we need to make a partnership successful. And just don't want to miss on one that often makes them unsuccessful or successful, but isn't covered, which is culture and cultural fit. And so if your businesses are not a cultural fit and they think differently and approach situations differently, then that is a problem, no matter how excited you are at other things. And so again, I think if I was to summarize in like one word for everything, I would say listen. So maybe it's like keeping, in a sentence, something like keeping your eyes open, like Ryan said, and seeking for others who may have similar interests or even maybe complementary skills or different perspectives, listening to truly understand what others' interests are, what you may have that may be of value, and then try to align interests the best you can. But I want to make sure we mention that kind of necessity to capture and not forget about culture as you're looking to partner out.
Critical. Thank you. And now I would like to turn it over to Nicole Owens from Mass Medtech. Thank you to our host and to Noah Willett also for helping to organize this webinar.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share your expertise. I want to thank everyone who joined us online as well. We appreciate you joining. Like I mentioned at the start, if you register, you will get a copy of the recording. So if you couldn't watch this live, that's okay. You still get the content. And I do want to reiterate, thank you to our sponsors today, the Quebec Government Office in Boston. We cannot put on great content like this for our membership without support of sponsors like you. So thank you. And I encourage you to go to massmedic.com/events and check out all the great events we have coming up. And we'll see you next time. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.